Hi, I'm Robert. Welcome back to another edition of the High Desert Ranch channel. Today we are going to be looking at the fence line on the spring pasture. And yes, even though there's snow on the ground, we're coming up towards the end of February. I haven't been up to this spring pasture property for a good long while, so I'm going to walk the fence line today. It's a couple miles worth of fence line, so we're going to see just exactly what it is we're up to and enjoy the beautiful day, and maybe I'll share you a little bit more of family history. Alright, so walking the fence line right now. Last time I was up here at this piece of property was several years ago with my father, and it was actually snowy just like this. So it's one of those things of when it comes to ranching, one of the most expensive input costs is, well, there's the land and then like the animals, but then fencing can actually be very expensive when you're talking miles of fence. And if you're going to do all the work yourself, you're looking, depending on the system you do. In this particular case, we're doing, sorry, I'm stepping in some of these snow drifts. For instance, it's this field fence. It's the welded fence netting. This looks only to be about 3-foot high fence netting, which would make a little bit of sense because my grandfather, he ran sheep and cattle. He didn't have the cattle and the sheep mixed, and so this fence is a netting with 2-strand of barbed wire, and you're looking right around 2022 prices, anywhere roughly $1.50 a foot. And it's expensive, but a good fence makes for a good neighbor, as I've always said, and my grandfather taught me. And so I'm just here making sure before we run cattle on spring pasture, just what all this looks like in the condition. So I've got here to the corner of the fence line, and it's looking pretty good. Some of these old pioneer fences, you can see these old cedar posts have been in for some well over 100 years, depending on the piece of property. So it's one of those things of, you do as little as you can when it comes to fencing, because anyone who's done fencing just knows how difficult and how time consuming it can be. So the fact that for the most part this fence is looking pretty darn good, as my grandpa said, that ought to scare him. He was a man who was pretty amazing as far as what he was able to do with the little bit that he had. He had to buy a lot of the property from his siblings, and then he bought extra property too, and all the while raising 7 children, including my father. So the child of the Great Depression, and father died when he was a teenager, so he really had to step it up as far as that was concerned, as far as ranching duties and what have you. So I'm following a deer trail. It's a lot easier. The snow's more compact, but just to give you an idea, some of this fence, how old it is. You've got this sagebrush that's growing up in some of this fencing right here. So you're looking at a few decades, several decades old even, perhaps, some of this fence line. So anyways, I've got the 2 boys here. They kind of took a break, got tired of walking with me. Can't really blame them, can you? We got a few miles to cover, but I figured it's a beautiful day. High temperature should be right around 20 degrees or so. And there's no breeze, so it's a perfect day. So I'm gonna pause and see where the two boys are at and pick back up where I left off. And you can spot them over there. Should have brought the two-way radios. Sometimes I forget how large these properties can be, and need me a snowmobile. Four-wheeler just end up getting stuck out here, especially amongst all the sagebrush. And you can see when I'm just following old deer and sheep cattle trails, there's not a lot of room to squeeze through. Plus, there's just something about I prefer to walk the land. Again, knowing, you know, I could get a four-wheeler or a snowmobile, but it's all about input costs too. It's one of those things of, you spend a couple $1,000s on a four-wheeler, a snowmobile, or you spend on fencing and livestock, and that's the decisions you're faced with when it comes to this kind of stuff. So, anyways, I see the boys over there. Get their attention, have them come. Alright, so we've reconnected. I told Carla we need to have radios next time, huh?
Yeah.
Buddy.
Or a snowplow.
Or a snowplow.
That'll be faster.
Yeah.
Snowplow.
Yeah, well, we're gonna continue going northward. I was telling it might be kind of fun to build some got a cowboy up, pick yourself up, buddy. There in that tree line, we be able to build a little fort or something. But my grandfather bought this property, and the guy, he had a family. I don't know the number, but it was a large family, and somehow scratched out a living here. So if you have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section below. It's one of those things that sometimes these things seem kind of mundane. It's not all awesome roundups and things you see in the so-called country videos nowadays. But yeah, this fence line's looking pretty good. I don't know who redid this fence line, but you can see that the cedar posts are fairly new. The way you can tell that is the bark, it's not completely stripped off from animals or the weather. So this plus the red is still on those barbs, on them barbs there, and the fence is fairly straight. Is evidenced by the other one that's easily probably 40 or 50 years old along that fence line. Easier to follow this cow path. Also the deer path you can see. So we're coming up to one of the first open irrigation ditches that flow here in the spring. Some of them are just earthen, others are concrete. It just depends. That's right, huh, Carla? Woo. Nice little drop. Come on, buddies. Come across. So come over to this tree line. So instead of walking through snow that's a foot deep, you can just use this trail. So here's the concrete ditches that I was talking about that will be using this come this springtime. I'll be flowing mighty fast with water. They my father used to say they would send the water down the ditch, and they would have an hour to drive to another piece of property that's connected by the same ditch system, and have time to set their all the gates and everything. And yet when they put in all that irrigation, the concrete irrigation, they had to have everything set because that would just use gravity just to flow fast, and they couldn't even make it down from the main head gate to another piece of property before the water was flowing. So anyways, you guys gonna take a rest? Yeah, it's be nice and shady in the come summertime. So something I wanted to show is here's what they call head gates, or like a, don't want to step off, or like a water weir set up where they points of diversion too, I guess, whatever you want to call it, but they can send it down that way in 3 directions in this case. And what's interesting, the easiest way to explain it is there's these metal culverts, and obviously it's used to channel water in different directions, but by the way it is cut, you're able to determine the flow rates, and you can tell whether, like, just how much water is flowing down a particular ditch. They can even usually indicate like high water, so that's why you have like this notch right here, and then even this notch right here. I don't know how well you can see that, but that all is to help indicate different things. So it's something I've got to get up to speed about. Again, some of the more boilerplate information of ranching, especially here in the high desert of the Intermountain West, where water is everything. Water is king. Especially where, if you haven't heard, we've been in a drought, and it's been about for the last 20 years or so that we've been in a drought, and the last 2 years have been really bad. We were saved last year by some July and August rains, and when I'm talking, we get about 14 inches of precipitation around here, and total 14 inches if we're lucky in a good year. And last year we had right around 7 inches, and just in July and August we received almost 3 inches of that 7 inches. So if it weren't for them late July, early August rains, we would have been in a lot of trouble. So anyways, that being said, that's kind of what we're up against. Again, it's important to get water, whether or not you have water rights. I had someone ask a question about they're looking for property out here with water rights, and that's just it. There's not a lot of rivers and lakes and ponds and streams and marshes, and just a lot of groundwater, even surface water out here that's why they call it the high desert, even though we're here at over 6,000 feet here on the valley floor. Some of those mountains behind me, they're 11, pushing 12,000 feet, both to the east and the west of us. So you got to have water with your property, whether it's water shares that you have to buy. Back in the early 90s, the state of Utah, they passed a law and some things to, people just couldn't drill. They're having a lot of problems where people are just sucking aquifers dry out in the West Desert. And so they set up water regions, and you have to buy from folks within your region. There's so many shares that you can buy, and each share differs. Some shares are 1 acre foot of water. So if you imagine 1 foot deep and then like an acre square, that's I'm trying to remember, 300 something thousand gallons of water. I can't remember off the top of my head, but either way, so you got to buy those shares, or you've got to have what they call high water, which is when there's all the runoff from these mountains here in the background that you can see behind me. There's the high water, and it goes back to that water weir that I was showing you, where you set all your head gates when there's a certain flow rate, and they're able to measure and gauge that off of the water flowing past a certain point. That's called high water. Anything above that, so there's certain properties where that's all they get, and you've got to make the best use of that high water while it lasts. Sometimes it can last for a month. It just depends. Last year we had about 8 or 9 days, I believe, of high water, and that can vary too, within just a few miles. It just depends on the runoff that's coming down the canyon, because some of this property, I haven't even been to all the spring pasture. I've just been kind of up closer to the main entrance gate, and just kind of up in that little grass pasture. So this is all kind of, as I go further to the north, northeast and northwest, I'll be curious to see what I come across and whatnot. So yeah, that was just a bird, beautiful hawk actually. So come on, boys. So I'll be curious once all this snow melts. Believe it or not, we should have a lot more snow than this on the ground. It's we didn't have precipitation since December 31st. It was over 51 days since we'd had any kind of precipitation fall. So we had a few inches the other day. So that broke the 51-day drought. It was the driest January on record since they started keeping records around these parts, 1873. So yeah, while it looks like there's plenty of snow, when you look at it, all the mountains right there, like I say, 10,000-11,000 feet, even as high as over 12, they need the snowpack because very little rain falls in the summertime. So we rely upon that snowpack to slowly melt off and get us through the warm summer months. So yeah, we hope to get some more snow. If you're new to homesteading or farming, ranching, just know that if you're not close to God, you will be. Around here, we spend half the time praying, the other half praying that it will snow. And depending on where you're at in the country, you might spend your time praying for rain and the other half for it to stop. So it really all just kind of depends. But right here, I'm actually looking in a wash. I'm not sure if water even flows down here anymore, or if it's all, every last drop is squeezed into irrigation. So, and yes, the snow is deep. So when you don't got snowshoes, you're just kind of sinking, so you're having to walk through all this. It's good exercise though. A couple miles worth of fence line to check out. And so anyways, that and ditch line, but some you can do, others you can't. So it's out here, it's a constant battle against nature. Each day is a constant battle, and that's what you gotta come to grips with. It's and some of the sage is dead, which means it's having a heck of a time for this 22-year drought. I heard it's a mega drought. I don't know much about that, but I do know the last 22 years have been very dry, and especially the last two have really gotten worse here. We're just not getting the rain or the snows like we used to. So, well, it looks like we've got some of the work cut out for us when all this snow melts. I hope you enjoyed today. It was one of those things of, this is life in the day of a rancher. Sometimes it's not all glorious and you hear the guitar playing in the background, but it's just simply checking on fence lines and making sure things are ready to go, because when it's ready to go, you've got a brief window, especially when it's on spring pasture around here. I hope that you check out some other videos. Please like, subscribe, share, and I hope that I was your ticket to help escape the ordinary. Come along and see what it's like to live the high life here in the high desert of the Intermountain West, here on the High Desert Ranch.